Well, hello again, everybody, my friends. Thanks for coming on Journeys with Jeff show. We're going to just change a little bit of the pace today. Have you ever come across something, read something, heard something, seen something that gives you cause to stop and think? Whether you wind up agreeing with it or not, something that kind of hits you in a way that makes you stop to take a few moments to think. It happens to me a lot, and I've come across some stuff in my own different, poems and excerpts from books and all kinds of quotations from different people that I wanted to share with you. I like to call it this portion of the show, Poignant Points to Ponder from the Pinnacle of the Precipice. And it's I just invite you to listen and see if there's anything in there that makes you think. Now you don't have to not to change your mind or anything, but just to maybe think about. So with that in mind, I just have a number of quotes and things I'd like to share with you that I found thought-provoking. That's the key, the thought-provoking. I didn't always wind up agreeing with everything. A lot of things, as you know, those of you out there, we all know that in many cases, a lot of our beliefs, a lot of our concepts, a lot of our definitions and connotations, they need to be qualified. We need to qualify things. We need to get down into the weeds and sort things out. And it can be a bit inconvenient. Sometimes we're more comfortable with, black and white, good or bad. But in real life, oftentimes it's more often than not, it's shades of gray. And we see that in what's going on in the world today, all over the world, you name it, all the geopolitical struggles, the war, the anger, the animosity. It's all on all sides, from all perspectives. So we need to try to understand that. Understanding is not condoning. We don't justify violence against other people. But if we can try to understand what causes that, then we've come a little bit of a way in understanding ourselves. And maybe if we understand the underlying causes that cause violence, maybe we can take some steps to do something about it. Maybe that can empower us. So join me, jump on board. I've got something here that I came across. You probably, editorialist David Brooks, you probably have heard of him. It's an editorial that he wrote some time ago. What do you say to someone who is suffering? And I'm not going to read everything from beginning to end for you. I'm just going to pick out a few salient points that in this case David Brooks makes in his article. Emotional pain feels like searing physical pain in the stomach and chest. By how tempting it is to self-isolate and rob yourself of the very human contact that you need the most. When it comes to extreme suffering, I must look to people who know more about it than I do, and one of them is Viktor Frankl, who many of you have heard about, who was a Nazi death camp survivor, and he wrote a book about that. He argued that we often can't control what happens to us in life. And a lot of belief systems, including Buddhism, a lot of belief systems say that. They stipulate that we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond to that. We respond to terrible circumstances with tenacity, courage, unselfishness, and dignity. And so we're right to treat those who have suffered with respect and credibility. All those who have suffered deserve our respect and credibility. Without your wound, where would you be? Thornton Wilder wrote. It is your very remorse that makes your low voice tremble into the hearts of men. The very angels themselves cannot persuade the wretched and blundering children on earth as can one human being broken on the wheels of living. In love's service only, the wounded soldier can serve. And that's, I think, is very, 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 very poignant. A poignant point to ponder. Very remorse that makes your voice tremble into the hearts of men. At any rate, that's from David Brooks. Just moving on, and just little things I've come across here as I've been going through some of my own files and stuff at home, and I said I got to share this with more people. This is something that Saul Bellow wrote in one of his books called Herzog, and he something that a lot of people maybe can relate to. With one long breath caught and held in his chest, he fought his sadness over his solitary life. Don't cry, you idiot, live or die, but don't poison everything. Saul Bellow wrote that about the main character in Herzog, who was like this middle-aged American guy, a college teacher, and how his psyche and his inner landscape is something that a lot of people can relate to, because being human beings, we all have a lot of things in common, obviously. And one of those is, how we deal with feelings and how we deal with life and how we deal with the events and the circumstances that we've all experienced. I thought that was very, very interesting. And here's something very nice that I like, a Walt Whitman poem. I think you'll like this. And I think that if there's something pulling on you I'm going to surf the web and see if there's anything that like keeping up with whatever the group is, American Idol, The Voice. There's so much stuff out there, I think, that can distract us. I'd like to think that those of you who are taking the time to listen to this, you're ingesting, you're absorbing stuff, in my opinion, that really appeals to the intellect, to the heart, to our higher selves. And I think if you stop to listen to this, you're doing yourself a great service, and other people too. Walt Whitman, the supper is over. The fire on the ground burns low. The wearied migrants sleep in their blankets. I walk by myself, I stand and look at the stars. When I think now, I never realized before. Now I absorb immortality and peace. I admire death and test propositions. How plenteous, how spiritual. The same old man and soul, the same old aspirations, and the same content. I was thinking the day most splendid till I saw what the not day exhibited. I was thinking this globe enough till there sprang out so noiseless around me myriad of other globes. Now, while the great thoughts of space and eternity fill me, I will measure myself by them. And now, touched with the lives of other globes, arrived as far along as those on earth, I wait, or waiting to arrive, or passed on further than those of the earth. I henceforth No more ignore them than I ignore my own life. Our lives on this earth arrive as far as mine, or waiting to arrive. Oh, I see now that life cannot exhibit all to me, as the day cannot. I see that I am to wait for what will be exhibited by death. Ooh, that's heavy stuff. It's a very thought-provoking. I like this one. This one I like. This is a comment on, I don't know, society, social mores, people interacting with, the society's conventions, and how some people kind of blindlessly just go along with them. Some people criticize them. This is something by George Bernard Shaw called Don Juan in Hell, and he's responding to his wife, who's having this lavish dinner party with all of these important, well-dressed, upper crust people coming, and she's telling him, "Hey, look, put on a good show and behave yourself." And his response is, according to George Bernard Shaw's response, is, "Pooh! Why should I be civil to them or to you? In this palace of lies, a truth or two will not hurt you. Your friends are the dullest dogs I know. They're not beautiful. They're only decorated. They're not clean. They are only shaved and starched. They're not dignified. They are only fashionably dressed. They are not educated. They are only college pass men. They are not religious. They are only pew renters. They're not moral. They are only conventional. They are not virtuous. They are only cowardly. They are not even vicious. They are only frail. They are not artistic. They are only lascivious. They are not prosperous. They're only rich. They're not loyal. They are only servile. Not dutiful, only sheepish. Not public-spirited, only patriotic. Not courageous, only quarrelsome. Not determined, only obstinate. Not masterful, only domineering. Not self-controlled, only obtuse. Not self-respecting, only vain. Not kind, only sentimental. Not social, only gregarious. Not considerate, only polite. Not intelligent, only opinionated. Not progressive, only factious. Not imaginative, only superstitious. Not just, only vindictive. Not generous, only propitiatory. Not disciplined, only cowed. And not thought of at all. Not thoughtful of at all. Every one of them to the very backbone of their soul. And when I read this, I said, Jeff, let's be honest. Take a little inventory. How much of this stuff can you relate to, or can you own as your own stuff? And I have to say that I am. I have a lot of these qualities that George Bernard criticizes, and it gave me some thought. And I think only by stopping to give things thoughtful do we give ourselves an opportunity to maybe grow a little bit, maybe become more thoughtful, maybe say, yes, I've done that. I've caught myself. I know that I can be opinionated, or just quarrelsome or obstinate. I'm guilty of all those things, but if we can take some inventory and own those things, maybe we have an opportunity, given ourselves an opportunity to change a little bit, maybe or maybe not. But that's that's up to each person. I love this one from made me think of my own childhood, and the childhood of a lot of people who I've who I know, and I'm sure who you know, we've all had our childhood wounds, slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. I don't think anybody really lives the perfectly idyllic childhood. We all have our certain emotional scars. In Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky wrote, "There's nothing a man cherishes more than the memories of his early childhood in his parents' home. This is always true as long as there was at least a little love and harmony in the family. Even if a man's childhood was spent in a very bad home, he may still have some happy memories as long as his mind can seek out those patches of happiness." I love that phrase. As long as his mind can seek out those patches of happiness. And I think back to my own childhood, and I think there was some trials and tribulations, but boy, the first tree that I climbed, the first best friend I ever had. If you've ever seen Stand By Me, go watch that movie. It makes you realize how those childhood friends were some of the most beautiful friendships. I think what did he write at the end of the movie? I've never had any friends in life like the friends I had when I was 12 years old. God, does anybody? So there can be some wonderful memories there that we can seek out. Dostoevsky, and that's why I feel very grateful that I have read and come across some of these stuff that I've come across, because as opposed to some of this stuff that we see on the media that doesn't really provoke or stimulate our minds to think much. We're just kind of like passive observers. But this is stuff that's really, I think, is really, really good. I like what some people regard as the most, William Blake. A lot of people regard this poem, some of the literary critics, they regard this poem as the most spiritual poem that's ever been written. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand and what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night, what a mortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? God's creation, the tiger and the lamb. There's just some things that you can ponder that, I guess, in my case, at least for me, that sometimes at the end of the day, when the lights are turned out and I'm by myself in bed and the books have been closed and all the voices have been quieted, and I think to myself at the end of the day, the bottom line is ultimately I just don't know. There's some things that that are beyond my ken, beyond my comprehension. And I think Blake makes a beautiful point of bringing that out. And here's another criticism. James Joyce James Joyce, as you know, wrote Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake. Very hard. He's a tough guy to read. But I did read, I didn't get through some of his stuff, but I did read A Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. James Joyce was Irish. He was brought up in Ireland. A very, very, like most people born in those days, a very devout Catholic home, religious home. A lot of talk about God and country and conforming to all these beliefs. And James Joyce said, from his perspective, in his opinion, when the soul of a man is born in this country, there are nets flung at it to hold it back from flight. You talk to me of nationality, language, religion. I shall try to fly by those nets. This is a man who was, as you can, was pretty rebellious, and I guess a rebelliousness can be a threat. It can be a threat to our. We can feel it's a threat to the coherence of our cohesion of our society, of the collective. Sometimes we don't like rebellious people. We don't like people who think for themselves. But some of the ones out there who do that sometimes have some of the most profound, important things to say, and I think they deserve to at least be listened to and considered. William Blake, to see a world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. Wow, that's this is something that a guy named Eric Hoffer. He wrote a book. He wrote a book when he was like 25 years old called The True Believers. He was a young man who worked in the docks in New York City, unloading and loading boats and stuff. Not highly educated, but extremely bright and observant and thoughtful. And in the early 50s, he wrote a book called The True Believers, of how and we all could relate to that today. It's been with us for millennia. The propaganda that we're told how, as one of my history professors admonished the class once, he said, "Remember, history is written by the victors. You're going to get a version. Sometimes it's a whitewashed version of what really happened, and beware of that. Beware of those traps that you fall into as you go about studying and learning, and the propaganda that we're all susceptible to, the beliefs that we all decide without examining critical thinking." He made a comment about how the power structure, the people in control, he said what they do is, and this is his quote, "They use the slime of fractured souls as mortar in the building of a new world." So, fractured souls, people who have been exploited, marginalized, disappointed, taken advantage of, they take advantage. They use that person's anger and sadness as mortar in the building of a new world, in saying that who to blame and pointing fingers at different people. This goes right into what Ken Follett wrote. I love Ken Follett. You probably heard of him. Ken Follett has written. He wrote a book called Pillars of the Earth, and he and amongst several other books that he's written, but this is one of Ken Follett's quotes that kind of follows from this Eric Hoffer quote about the slime of fractured souls. Ken Follett wrote, "The savages will always be in control. Perhaps greed will outweigh wisdom in the counsels of the mighty. Perhaps fear will overcome compassion in the mind of a man with a sword in his hand." Now that talks. I mean, and that applies. This is written years and years ago. That applies. I think we can all say how that applies today. How this world is just riddled with fear, and when fear and reason. Fear is much deeper in our amygdala. Fear is our part of our nature for thousands of years, but the prefrontal cortex is pretty new. So when fear is strong enough, if you can get the people fearful enough, it'll blow reason right out of the water. And when reason is blown out of the water, there goes compassion, there goes love, there goes harmony, and we have to be careful of that. We all have to have a responsibility to be very careful of that. The next time you see me, I'm going to have some more. I've got some more poems. I've got some more little thoughts to share with you. I hope that you've found at least one word, one phrase in here to say, well, that's something worth thinking about. I know in my own case, so many of this stuff that I've read, I think to myself, I've never thought of that before. I never really thought in those words before. I never thought in those terms before. And I'm fortunate enough to have some friends, a circle of friends, who were extremely thoughtful, very bright, very well read. And as we talk our dialogues, they say things. They share their perspective. They share their knowledge. They share their feelings, and they share their critical thinking. And I think to myself, I never would have thought of that on my own. I never would have, something that never would have occurred to me without somebody provoking that, somebody introducing that to me. And I'm very thankful to all of the authors and the poets and the philosophers and my friends and people like you out there who I meet every day, who always give me reason to think. And like a good close friend of mine said once, he said, "Jeff, I've never in my life met a person or come across a person that I haven't learned something from." And if you can look it up, everybody is my teacher. The world is my teacher. And I can learn from anybody and everybody. That's pretty cool. So thank you very much, and I want to say hello to a bunch of people. Ellen Watt over at Watts over in Court of St. James, and all of my other neighbors there whose names I mentioned before. Want to thank you very much, and the next time we're going to do some more Poignant Points to Ponder, and then we're going to have some more guests on, and we're going to kind of just shuffle things up a little bit. So thank you very much, and God bless all of us. Take care.